Welcome to ESG Decoded, where we navigate the evolving landscape of environmental, social, and governance, ESG. Join me, Amanda Shea, and Erika Schiller as we explore the intersection of sustainability, innovation, and ethical leadership.
Hello, and welcome back to ESG Decoded. I'm your host, Erika Schiller. Today, I'm talking with two super interesting men who are here to share about a project that we're doing together in Colombia and biodiversity and how we should think about biodiversity, why it's important to protect, and what's the latest happening there, because there was COP16 in Cali, Colombia last week, so in October, that was focused on biodiversity and advancing protections in the space, both from environmentalists and policymakers, country leaders around the globe. So joining me, I have Dr. Stuart Pimm. He is a world leader in the study of present-day extinctions and what can be done to prevent them. He is a professor at Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment, and his research covers the reasons why species become extinct, how fast they do so, the global patterns of habitat loss and extinction, and importantly, the management of consequences of this research. Pimm is the author of over 350 scientific papers and 5 books, and one of the most highly cited environmental scientists. On top of his work, he is also the founder of Saving Nature, which is a nonprofit that uses donations for carbon emission offsets to fund local conservation groups in areas of exceptional tropical biodiversity to restore degraded lands. You'll hear today about a project in Colombia that definitely fits this bill, and Stuart is not limited to that. He's working around the globe saving important biodiversity areas. We also are joined by Luis Mazariegos. Luis is the founder of the Bioconservancy Foundation with a vision to conserve the biodiversity of natural Andean ecosystems in Colombia through the integration of research, environmental education, active participation of the community, and the establishment of natural protected areas and corridors. Luis came upon this project and started this organization because of his love of photography and hummingbirds, traveling to many reserves and in many different countries, and really understanding both how important they were to protect, how, I guess you could say, how fragile these animals can be and how we need to protect the biodiversity. He's an award-winning photographer of hummingbirds and has been published in the National Geographic along with other publications. So I'm delighted to have you both on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erika.
Yeah. And, just some scene setting. So I mentioned the biodiversity COP was last week in Colombia. And Stuart, you told me this was your first time attending a biodiversity COP. So I'd love to hear, what were your key takeaways? What was your experience like? And what would you share with our listeners who weren't there?
I have never been to a COP before because I think rather unkindly, I thought they were probably a large number of politicians who spent an enormous amount of time talking to each other and did not come up with the kind of progress that I'd like to see. That's terribly unkind. What I experienced in Cali last week was apparently 20,000 people from around the world who are concerned about biodiversity and environmental issues. And there was an enormous amount of energy and excitement. It was a very intense week. There were people from indigenous groups, politicians, there were scientists, activists, a very high degree of energy of people coming together because they're concerned about the loss of biological diversity.
And were there some key themes that you heard in the discussions that you think will continue on after this COP and leading into the next?
I think one of the themes that's going to be picked up by the media is that we need more resources for biodiversity. We need more resources for its protection. But I'm not sure that's the theme that impressed me the most. Yes, we need more money, and there's going to be a lot of media attention about that. But I was impressed by the number of solutions and the number of ideas, and by how young the audience was, how young the people were there. It was a very young, lively group of very energetic young men and women. And that's what I got out of it. There's a lot of great ideas coming out of this meeting.
Mm-hmm. And, we're going to talk a little bit about this project in Colombia, and it's being funded in part by carbon credits, or I guess you could say primarily by carbon credits. And, biodiversity doesn't fit into that same box. You don't measure a ton of animals, right? And so I've read some different articles about what are ways to think about providing funding and, quantifying benefits. And I read one article I thought was interesting. It was talking about how we could think about it more like infrastructure as opposed to, a carbon credit market. So did that come up at all? Or how are you thinking about ways of providing funding?
I think what we all realize is there's a nexus of environmental problems around biodiversity. When you chop a forest down, you put, globally, billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Deforestation is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Tropical deforestation puts about 1 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. But it's also the major driver of biodiversity loss. It's also related to diseases that we catch, like COVID and HIV and many other diseases. So there's a human health aspect to this. And it's also a process that harms the livelihoods and the well-being of local communities. So there's this complex interconnection of ideas. I think the infrastructure idea is a nice way of viewing it, but they're all very closely connected.
Thank you. And, today we wanted to talk about the Cloud Forest project that Luis started in Colombia. And Luis, I'd love if you would share with us, what is this project and what are the activities on the ground? Can you share more about the project?
Sure. Well, this project started basically in 2006, and it was due to my pursuit of hummingbirds. I went there to look for a species that was supposed to be a hybrid, but I was sure that it's probably a true species, and it was. And I met the people that discovered it. And one of these guys, Gustavo Suarez, basically, when I told him what I was doing and that I wanted to create a reserve, he said, I have the place for you. I've been doing bird inventories. And when he took me there and I saw obviously the area, met the people, which really I think is what's key here. Well, I was convinced that it was a place to begin this. And so we started as a small area, and through our work in around 2010, I met Stuart, and one of the persons that basically how we connected was through Jorge Enrique Orejuela, which was is a Colombian well known for his creation or his management of several of natural areas in Colombia. One of them, La Planada Nature Reserve, and from which I consider him like a mentor. And we set up this place and basically decided, okay, we need to conserve, but also get the community involved. And as we started growing and growing and looking at the problems of the area, and what really called to my attention was, I was into hummingbirds and generally birds, but when you started looking at other different groups, what we found was that this area is unbelievably biodiverse, and many new species for science have been discovered there. It's over 100 of them that are being described. Already 32 are published, but obviously we're still working on that and discovering more and more every time we look for. So, looking at this, the importance of this area for biodiversity, obviously this project became more important. And one thing we noticed was habitat loss. And obviously, there were patches of forest being isolated, and the possibility of a much larger area being pinched off just by a few, meters of forest that still connected the area. So, with saving nature, we launched this initiative of recovering this area and being able to restore this corridor. And that's when everything came up to be able to get this project of carbon credits going. And so far it's been extremely successful, and I believe that this project is something that could be applied in so many areas of the Andes where the biodiversity is still, to me, unknown. I mean, Colombia is known as number one in birds, and sometimes it is second in other groups. But to me personally, I believe that Colombia is number one in all of the groups. It's just that we haven't looked to discover all the biodiversity that's in these areas.
When you first started this project, you acquired an initial parcel of land, and then you've done expansions, right? And those expansions are primarily buying degraded cattle lands. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you restore the area?
Yes, we have done both. We have actually bought forested land, but one key goal is to buy areas that have been used for cattle grazing and trying to restore it. And to me, this project brings in here is where the community gets involved in a very important way. I mean, we were thinking, traditionally in these areas, you have, the people are working for their day labor, usually men, and the women stay at home and they watch for the children, but also cook for their husbands. And we decided to get them involved by the women tending to the tree nurseries. And so we gave them all the materials. We taught them how to grow the native tree species, and we were able to basically bring into the project like 16 nurseries right now, all handled by each individual woman from different families. And then we bought the trees back from them, which means that now the women of the community had significant income. And they were obviously, they always think more of the family, like, oh, I need to buy like clothes for my children, or I need to do some building a new area for the home, or improving my home, or even like in some cases like building a bathroom. I mean, sometimes when you hear that, you're like, whoa, wait a second, what are the conditions in which some of these families live? So it has been, to me, I mean, it's a life changer project. I mean, this changes lives, especially in an area that used to be in the middle of guerrilla fighting, which was only in the early 2000s. So when you look at these people that have actually lost a future outlook, and watching them, how they have changed and how this project has changed their lives, is really gratifying. All these projects, if they're able to involve this type of benefits, I think is what's really all about this.
And Luis, when you are talking with local community, are you talking about why you're protecting it and the benefits of protection? Because when I think about a forest restoration project and having a long-term impact, we need people to protect it, right? And understand why it's valuable. Is that part of the conversation?
Yes, I mean, I think that even from the beginning, when we hired, for example, one of our first park rangers was the local hunter. He used to hunt wildlife, and we started talking to him and getting him involved. And then he was the specialist in setting up camera traps, because he knew where the animals were, and how this one highway used by all animals. I mean, you would at one time of the day, then you'd see the guan going through. Another time at the Tyra, another time it was the puma, the ocelot, and it was surprising to me to see all the animals using the same trail but at different times of the day. And this person suddenly told me, you know, I have been so stupid and ignorant of all this that you're explaining me, But I told him, no, you're in a place, this is your livelihood, this is where you grew up. You didn't know better. Now that you're better informed and you see the impacts, and you have been the witness of the transformation of this area, and now you realize, you're now conscious of what you're doing, what you're protecting, and how excited they are to participate. And one thing that I think has been very hugely important is that when we discover species, We involve them. We give them the credit when we publish an article. They're part of the as being an author, and also the recognition of the importance of what they are doing. When for example, we did this small short documentary on the black and chestnut eagle, and its nest wasn't known, and these two guys, Jorge and Osman, filmed this bird at altitudes of 40 meters up in a tree, and they get all this footage, and you give them also the credit to them, and we, because we launched this during a film festival, and seeing them there, I mean, they're proud of the, I mean, extremely proud of the work they've done. And so then comes the like, when they are, since they're part of the community, people start watching them and seeing like, oh, what are these guys doing? They're always with catching little animals and that, and so you get also the school kids involved, teaching them about nature, how the environment works. Then from there on, it's like even their parents are more open to listening to the stories, and it's an amazing, I'd say, an amazing trip. I mean, step by step, we've been getting them all involved in the project, and I think they now see a reason of why protecting those forests is important. I mean, recently last year we had a dry spell. Some homes didn't have any water, and they realized that, oh, okay, why is there so much water at the reserve, or at the areas where we are at, and or the streams that we protect, and now why the water of this little stream being protected by a few trees is gone. And some of them even ask permission, oh, can we take some water from some of your of plots? And I say, sure, there it is. And so now there's even more consciousness of the importance of protecting habitat, and that since they're benefiting from the project, they see that, okay, yeah, conservation pays. This is not just something that you hear on the news, or I've have when you have meetings with politicians that come there to promise things just to get a vote, and now they realize that, okay, and what I feel also is that at the beginning, the project was, okay, you're there, we're here. Now we're included in the family. We're part of the village. We're part of their daily lives. They really, we don't have any signs prohibiting anything. And if a hunter appears to come up, they will tell them, look, you need to go somewhere else because this area is protected. So they have really interiorized the project. I think they think it's like part of their now daily life, and that it is important for their future.
I mean, I think that what Luis has said is, in a very general sense, the fact that we're not just planting a lot of trees. Planting trees is good. It soaks up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and that's where the carbon credits come from. But by planting a forest, you're protecting the watershed, you're protecting the rivers, but you're also protecting the landscape. I mean, the tragedy of these areas that are being deforested is, this is a rainforest. It's a wet part of the world, and on steep mountain slopes, when you have a heavy rain, if you don't have forest, the land washes away. So, yes, there are carbon credits, but there's a credit for water supply, for looking after the landscape. And people clearly understand how all of those things come together.
And another important part of the project is the science behind it, because obviously we're doing these activities, but the science behind it, like determining at what point the forest becomes, is able to maintain certain levels of biodiversity, or during how much time of the day is the forest capturing water from the air. That to me is also has been extremely key. I mean, and the data shows that just by having forests, you're reducing the temperature by that 1.2 to 1.5 degrees Celsius that we're so worried about. So I think that shows immediately how restoring an area can bring all those, bigger benefits.
I had the pleasure of coming out and visiting the reserve about 2 years ago, and it was wonderful. Thank you so much for hosting me, Luis. But, I thought it was really interesting in the conversations about why a carbon project can benefit this. And part of it was, you get credit for the carbon as it's absorbed by the trees over time, right? And the crediting period could be 30 years, could be 50 years, could be a very long time frame as the trees continue to grow and mature. And that funding over a long duration funds the jobs for the park rangers, funds the community engagement. And so it's not just a one-time, land acquisition, right? It's ongoing funding for a long time frame to really continue to provide support and maintenance for the project. And I thought that was really exciting as well to see that. Well, thank you so much for sharing about this project. It's really incredible to see the species, the density of forest, right? I think you were sharing with me about how there's not just the trees because of the cloud forest. There's water coming from every level on a tree. So there's orchids and air plants and all these different kinds of species growing up and down every single tree. So, and just huge biomass growth in these forests. And seeing the mature forests was incredible. It just looked like another world. Stuart, I was hoping you could share with us some closing thoughts. You shared about what's important about this project, but what keeps you energized to continue to do your conservation work?
We hear so many awful statistics about the state of the planet, and some of them are quite clearly exaggerations. What keeps me going is an unassailable sense of optimism. There are things that we can do. We can restore nature, we can stitch nature back together, we can recognize that by far the best use of resources is to use them wisely. And I think this project, along with many other projects that we do at Saving Nature, gives me a huge sense of optimism about the future. Enhanced by the fact there are all these young people at COP16. We're not dead. We're alive, we're kicking, we're going to go forward, and we're going to make the planet a better place. We're going to give to our kids and grandkids a lovely planet. And it's clear from projects like this that we can do that.
And Luis, what about you? What keeps you motivated to continue your work?
Pretty much I get involved in many aspects of it, but one of the things that I'm very keen into is being able to discover all this biodiversity. I mean, I think knowledge and knowing what is there is what's going to give us also the tools to protect these areas and put them in a map and show how important it is for conserving and maintaining these ecosystems, and obviously looking into how people are going to benefit, the locals especially benefit from all this. So I wish I had 100 more years to live because, again, there's so much to do. But I think that the new generation is going to be very conscious of what's in their hands and what their responsibility is going to be. So, and like Stuart said, looking at all this young generation and being involved in during the COP16 and even, I'm going to say it. I live in Cali, and Cali used to be known as we are the most civic city in Colombia. We had lost that. And this COP16 has brought back that sense of look at what Cali means in terms of all that surrounds us, the biodiversity that surrounds the city, and how people are becoming even more aware of that. So that's hugely important. The Cauca Valley in itself, here where Cali is located, is an area where a lot of water is produced in both the central and the western Andes. And so it's a place where many multinationals come to set up their operations, and it's due because of the water. That's what I heard from statistics. It's not due to anything. It's not because it's beautiful, the climate, whatever. No, it's water. Water is becoming more important each day, and the only way we're going to be able to sustain that is if we conserve this wonderful cloud forests and obviously the higher Andes to provide this water for the future.
Wonderful. It's so important to understand the impacts that you both are doing on the ground. So wonderful conversation. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you, Erika.
Thanks so much.
Whether you're a seasoned ESG practitioner or embarking on your sustainability journey, ESG Decoded is your trusted source for inspiration and actionable insights for responsible business practices. Subscribe on your favorite streaming platforms to be notified of new episodes dropped bi-weekly on Tuesday mornings, and connect with us at ESG Decoded on social media or by visiting www.climeco.com.